a little bit earlier, obviously, with Tim. That was Tim had to get away a little bit early, so we tweaked the schedule slightly to accommodate that. What we have this evening is we've got a selection of pieces for you. Now, the interesting thing, a few years on from the release of our favorite computer game and other stuff going on, is that you've got a cross section of different activities and projects going on. So, first up is Elite Dangerous author Darren Gray, who, if you haven't read The Silver Comet, do read The Silver Comet. It is an excellent piece of fiction that it was his contribution to the Elite Dangerous universe. And Darren's going to read from us from Jupiter Hell, which is his new project. Okay. So what'll then happen is, obviously, we'll turn over and put new headphones on new reader person, and I will then introduce your next storyteller. Over to you, Darren.
So, yeah, that's on. Okay. I have no idea how to turn it on, but as long as you can hear me, that's all right. So just so people know, Jupiter Hell is a computer game currently in development. It was kickstarted last year. There's a little excerpt from it, just to give some context. It's about it's set in a space station where a player lands and finds that it's kind of been taken over by demons and everyone's gone mad and trying to figure out what's happened whilst killing things, as tends to happen in computer games. So this is a little excerpt which is in the form of log entries that one finds in the game. The Diary of Iris Miller. Entry 1. We've just settled into our quarters on Callisto. It's a little low on space, though I'm sure we'll get used to it in time. I suppose there's an upside to how little we could pack on the shuttle. Richard starts his new job tomorrow with a new mining operation on Io. He's excited as a little puppy. It's almost infectious. I managed to get some part-time work at the medical facility here. It's a small unit, just serving the odd scrapes amongst the miners and Marines stationed here. Hard to compare to the big hospital back home. Perhaps a change of pace will be nice. I hope. Entry 2. Richard's away on Io now. I had a brief vid chat with him an hour ago, but the lag made it hard to really connect. I wish he were here. I've no one to talk to here. The men are simply revolting, only able to communicate in grunts and crude jokes. I can't stand being near them. The women miners are few, and they aren't much different. They're so pumped full of steroids, they always look the same. But at least they don't stare at me in the same way. Mostly. I don't even want to think about work. I miss Richard. Entry 3. I'm so sick of the medical facility here. It's a constant stream of leering men. I can feel their eyes on me, looking me up and down. It's just horrible. I've not told Richard. He wouldn't understand. And he's been in such a mood since he came back from Io. I don't want to set him off again. Entry 4. One of my patients tried to touch me today. I almost hit him in response. Maybe good I didn't. It could have ended badly. The men here are so aggressive. But the guy just laughed it off when I scolded him. I tried telling the head doctor, and he just shrugged. I can't tell Richard. It would make him angry. Or would it? Maybe he wouldn't even care. He seems so distant now. I miss home. Entry 5. I almost had a breakdown today. Work is stressing me out. Line after line of leering men, faking injury so they can ogle the woman doctor. I can feel their eyes all over me. It's sickening. I tried telling Richard, tried saying how unhappy I was. What a mistake. He got angry, so angry. We rowed like we've never rowed before, and then he stormed off to the gym. I wish he could understand me better, see things from my perspective. But all he cares about is himself and his career. He's off to Io again for a week tomorrow. Perhaps that's for the best. Some time apart. Entry 6. Oh God, I'm in so much trouble. I don't know what to do. A man attacked me tonight. I could see it coming, see him staring at me, see him checking the ward was empty. But I was ready, and as soon as he touched me, I stabbed a syringe into his neck. I don't know what came over me then. It was just a sedative. It should have just knocked him out. But I kept stabbing. I couldn't stop. All my frustration, all my fear and anger, it just came over me. And I kept on going even after the needle shattered. Just lay there dead, blood spilling over the floor. I can't believe I killed someone. I'm supposed to be a doctor. I managed to clean it up, to get his body into the bio-waste furnace. I had to cut it up into so many pieces, but it's all out of sight. Will anyone find out? I'm so scared. Richard not back for 4 days. Should I tell him? I'm so alone. Entry 7. Richard came back today. He seemed surprised to see me. I thought he'd be happy. Thought he'd be glad to see how well I've adjusted now. How much I feel I fit in. But he was strange. He didn't react very sensibly at all. I showed him my collection, all the eyes I've taken from the patients at the facility. I showed him how I sewed them all over my chest. I could always feel their eyes on me before, but now I'm in control. Now I've shown I'm not here for them to stare at. It feels so much better. Yet Richard was confused somehow. He seemed so unhappy. But never mind. I was ready for that too. And it's all better now. Richard's having a good lie down after I took my scalpel to him. Do you understand now, Richard? Can you see things from my perspective? Your eyes are on me now, on me forever. I can feel your skin against my face, still warm, spread against my skin. Can you feel what I feel, Richard? We're closer now than we've ever been before. Let's not argue anymore. I think we can be happy here.
Aaron. Next up, we have Anna Smith-Spark. Now, for those of you that don't know about Anna's debut novel, which is out next week, then I'm quite shocked because Anna's usually very good at telling everybody that her debut novel is out next week. Now, if you've seen some of the press on this, it's been very, very complimentary. I've been very fortunate to hear Anna read very, very many times. Well, there's no point in me hyping it up. I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. So yes, this is called The Broken Knives, which is, I think we're reading chapter 1, aren't we?
Yes.
And this is grimdark fantasy, so a little bit of a departure from space, but I do think this evening's selection will be particularly dark, which, thank you, Darren. It obviously kicked us off really well in that regard. So, Anna.
Okay, so this is chapter 1 of The Court of Broken Knives. Knives. Knives everywhere, coming down like rain, down to close work like that. Men wrestling in the mud, jabbing at each other, too tired to care anymore. Just die and get it over with. Half of them fighting with their guts hanging out of their stomachs, stinking of shit, oozing pink and white and red. Half dead men lying in the filth, screaming, a whole lot of things screaming. Impossible to tell who's who anymore, mud and blood and shadows, and that's it. Kill them all, keep killing until we're all dead. The knife jabs and twists, and the man he's fighting falls sideways, all the breath going out of him with a sigh of relief. Another there behind. God's, his arms ache, his head aches, blood in his eyes. He twists the knife again and thrusts with a broken-off sword, and that man too dies. Fire explodes somewhere over to the left, white as maggots, silent as maggots, then shrieks as men burn. He swings the stub of the sword and catches the man on the leg. Not hard, but hard enough. The man stumbles and he's on him quick with the knife, cutting. A good lot of blood, and the man's down and dead, still flapping about like a fish, but you can see in his eyes that he's finished. His legs just haven't quite caught up yet. The sun is setting, casting long shadows. Oh, beautiful evening, stars rising in a sky the colour of rotting wounds. The dragon's mouth, the white lady, the dog. A good star, the dog. Brings plagues and fevers and inflames desire. Its rising marks the coming of midsummer, so maybe no more campaigning in the sodding rain. Wet leather stinks, mud stinks, shit stinks when the latrine trench overflows. Another burst of white fire. He hates the way it's silent, unnatural, unnerving. Screams again, screams so bad your ears ring for days. The sky weeps and howls, and it's difficult to know what's screaming, you, or the enemy, or the other things. Men are fighting in great clotted knots like milk curds. He sprints a little to where two men are struggling together, leaps at one from behind, pulls him down, skewers him. Hard crack of bone, lovely soft yield of fat and innards. Suety. The other yells hoarsely and swings a punch at him. Lost his knife even. Bare knuckles. He ducks and kicks out hard, overbalances and almost falls. The man kicks back, tries to get him in a wrestling grip. Up close together, two pairs of teeth gritted in each other. A hand smashes his face, gets his nose, digs in. He bites at it. Dirty, calloused, iron taste of blood bright in his mouth. But the hand won't let up, crushing his face into his skull. He swallows and almost chokes on the blood pouring from the wound he's made. Blood and snot and shreds of cracked, dry human skin. Manages to get the knife in and stabs hard into the back of the man's thigh. Not enough to kill, but the hand jerks out from his face. Lashes out and gets his opponent in the soft part of the throat, pulls his knife out and gazes around the battlefield at the figures hacking at each other while the earth rots beneath them. All eternity they've been fighting. All the edges blunted. Sword edges and knife edges and the edges in the mind. Keep killing. Keep killing. Keep killing till you're all dead. And then he's dead. A blade gets him in the side and the weak point under the shoulder where his armour has to give till his arm move. Far in, twisting, aiming down, killing wound. He hears his body rip. Oh gods and demons, oh gods and demons and fuck. He swings round, strikes at the man who stabbed him. The man facing him is a wraith, scarlet with blood, head open, oozing out brain stuff. You're dying, he thinks. You're dying, and you've killed me. Not fair. Shadows twist around them. We're all dying, he thinks, one way or another. Just some of us quicker than others. You fight and you die, and always another 20 men queuing up behind you. Why we march and why we die, and what life means, it's all a lie. Death, death, death. Understands that better than he's ever understood anything, even his own name. But suddenly, for a moment, he's not sure he wants to die. The battlefield falls silent. He blinks and sees light. A figure in silver armour, white, shining, blazing with light like the sun. A red cloak billowing in the wind. Moves through the ranks of the dead and the dying, and the light beats onto them, pure and clean. Amrath, Amrath. Voices whispering like the wind blowing across salt marsh. Voices calling like birds. Here, walking among us, bright as summer dew. Amrath, Amrath. The shadows fall away as the figure passes. Everything is light. Amrath, Amrath. The men cheer with one voice. No longer one side or the other, just men gazing and cheering as the figure passes. He cheers until his throat aches. Feels restored, seeing it. No longer tired and wounded and dying. Healed. strong. Amrath, Amrath. Figure halts, gazes around, searching. Finds. A dark-clad man leaps forward, swaying into the light, poised across from the shining figure, yearning towards it, draws a sword, burning with blue flame. Amrath, Amrath! Harsh voice like crows, challenging. Amrath! He watches joyfully, so beautiful, watches and nothing in the world matters except to behold the radiance of his God. The bright figure draws a sword that shines like all the stars and the moon and the sun, a single dark ruby in its hilt. The dark figure rushes onwards, screeching something, meets the bright figure with a clash. White light and blue fire and white light. His eyes hurt almost as he watches, but he cannot bear to look away. The two struggle for a moment, like a candle flame flickering, like the dawn on broken water, like a woman dancing in jewels and silk. The silver sword comes up, throws the dark figure back. Blue fire blazes, engulfing everything, the silver armor running with flame. Crash of metal, sparks like a blacksmith's anvil. The shining figure takes a step back defensively, parries, strikes out. The other blocks it, roars, howls, laughs. The mage blade swings again, slicing, trailing blue fire. Blue arcs in the evening gloom, shapes and words written on the air, death words, pain words, words of hope and fear and despair. The shining figure parries again, the silver sword rippling beneath the impact of the other's blade. So brilliant with light that rainbows dance on the ground around it. Like a woman's hair throwing out drops of water, tossing back her head in summer rain. Like snow falling, like coloured stars. The two fighters shifting, stepping in each other's footprints, stepping in each other's shadows, circling like birds. The silver sword flashes out and up and downwards, and the other falls back, bleeding from the throat. Great spreading gush of red. The blue flame dies. He cheers and his heart is aching. It's so full of joy. The shining figure turns, looks at the men watching, looks at him, screams. Things shriek back that make the world tremble. Silver sword rises and falls. 5 men, 10, 20, a pile of corpses. He stares mesmerized at the dying. The beauty of it, the most beautiful thing in the world. Killing and such perfect joy. His heart overflowing, his heart singing. This, oh indeed, oh for this, all men are born. He screams in answer, dying, throws himself against his God's enemies with knife and sword and nails and teeth. Why we march and why we die, and what life means, it's all a lie. Death, death, death.
Okay, thank you, Anna. That was. Oh, dear. Shivers. Goodness. Right. Okay, Kevin, so if we get you into the middle, sir. Fabulous. Now, those of you that have been listening to Data Slate, you may have heard a sort of preview of a few of these pieces. This is Kevin's debut novel. It's the ink still wet, though, in terms of what's there. So do you think this is probably the first time that we've, kind of heard a bit of it? Huh? Yeah, you're waiting for the headphones. Hang on, here they come. Glamorous assistant making you up. There we are.
Okay,
There we
I've
go.
read this out for a small writing group in Oxford. No trouble. You're the first people to hear this, apart from that. My first novel is called We Make Our Own Light. It's a piece of hard science fiction. This is a scene pretty near the start of the book. Little bit of context. Young schoolgirl, 13-year-old schoolgirl, very inquisitive, very bright. She asked a simple question at school. How do you know our world's always been the same shape? She was caned for asking a simple question, so obviously something's gone seriously wrong. Okay, I'll start reading now. Foss learned best at night. Her hair streamed back into the bedroom as her eyes readjusted to the scented darkness outside. She tried to understand what she'd seen. An astounding riot of light and energy had gripped the landscape near the windmill. She'd felt distant vibrations, seen light struggle through a cloud of dust, switching between bright and faint. Each flare lit up swathes of the surrounding wood. She'd felt a burst of wind a few seconds after each pulse, as if each gust had been turned into light before reaching her. Foss's shutters were wide open. The bitter night air streamed into her bedroom, though the dancing light still burned in her memory. She took a final breath, the lemon fragrance biting at her, before she snapped the shutters together, wrapping the cord around the latch. Night meant learning, fewer sights and distractions. Teachers kept real learning away from you. School meant memorizing lists, recipes, and strings of words, but never learning why. They'd teach cooking, mending clothes, but not where the world came from, or why it had its shape, or where it would end up. All doing in no thought. At 13, she deserved answers. Her hammock would be soft and warm with blankets piled on top, but sleep would wait. Here was a chance to learn. Had there been an accident? Flames needed close guarding, but this light wasn't fire. This light had rhythm. The colour was closer to the light of lanterns, the violet tinge sort the church brought out on holy nights. The priest told you light was a rare gift, but here someone had splashed it around like water. Perhaps it was a signal for anyone watching, a beacon, a sign for people attracted to light, a nudge to wake people from dreaming. She remembered the miller she'd seen at school, talking about light. Was he behind this? Could she creep through the darkness, find the windmill's remains? She'd passed it many times, watching the sails billow and snap against the wind, listening to the echoing chatter as its wheels hammered against each other. There hadn't been any lanterns there. Everyone was supposed to make do with sunlight. The churchmen would swarm the site tomorrow. They'd collect evidence and hide it from others, leaving nothing to learn. Could she reach it first? Fear and curiosity sparred. Foss remembered her dad's vague warnings, rumours of violent people roaming the woods at night, made desperate through hunger. He'd not wanted to scare her, and his caution seemed faint and thin now, something she could push aside and forget. She tasted wonder when light first streamed through her shutters. Her skin had flushed, her breathing had quickened. She had had enough of following her parents, enough of being taken places. The desire to learn burnt inside her. Strange cravings had shaped her mind over the last year, since she had stopped playing with dolls. This was opportunity, a chance to learn without teachers meddling. Her hand was still sore from Grump's caning 2 days ago. Her fingers traced the welts. Now Foss sat on her hammock. The light had vanished. Slipping back under the blankets would be easy. She'd be safe. She'd avoid upsetting her parents. But here was a chance to learn, to see something outside the school's control, to see what real change looked like. Not understanding something meant there was something to learn. She decided. She'd see what remained, collect any clues. Her bare feet were steady on the wooden floor. She found the right balance between speed and silence. Foss dressed. Lots of layers, thick boots, dressing for trees and bracken. Taking a real-life light wasn't safe, but her lyramic cloak still cast a faint gleam. She'd outgrown it, so she draped over her shoulders. The route needed planning. The path from her house would be easy. The gate was silent. The road would be simple, though churchmen might use it. She'd go through the hedge and turn right, sneaking through the wood. The list trees would slow her down with their snagging branches, but they'd also hide her. She knew her parents' way of sleeping, out with the light like good citizens. They'd get in trouble if anyone saw her roaming outside at night, though she'd never been caught, and she'd return well before dawn. A dim light fell from the lyramic fabric, enough to pick out her bedroom walls. She needed to find a gap in the hedge. She remembered one where her friends had worn the henja stalks down to nothing. The cloak would let her find the gap. Foss touched a doll, one she had loved. A year ago she should have taken it with her, but now she had to travel light. Foss held her breath as she glanced around her room, easing her door open. Why did eyes take time to get used to darkness? No point asking teachers. He needed to find answers yourself. Her parents would wake at any sound she made, and the stairs would creak. Waking her parents would mean endless questions, but she had to explore. Foss bent over, resting her body on the banister, lifting her feet clear of the door and the floor, and sliding down silently. Faint shadows pirouetted around her. She looked back and listened, but upstairs stayed silent. She'd be free for the next few hours. She could hide the cloak if any churchman appeared. The front door opened silently. She kept her head away from the hanging flower basket holding a cloak coast. The path and gate were familiar. Foss found the hedge's gap without trouble and climbed into the wood. The tree trunks painted the night with the faintest blue-green tinge. The air burst of pepper and lemon scents. They'd strengthened as night deepened. She held her breath, listening for any hushed whisper or snapping twig. The trees were brighter than normal. Had the flaring windmill taught them something? Foss had handled acorns, ideas for trees, tiny plans bundled into a nut. She'd seen saplings, child trees, eager to raise themselves into adults, spreading the wood through the years. Why was her world different? Why hadn't her world grown from a seed? The teachers insisted the world had always been the shape it was now, never changing. A ring without beginning, curving down in front of you. Everything they knew lived there. Walk fair enough and you'd end up where you'd started. They told her there was nothing but rock beyond the ring, an endless barrier. Everything they needed was on the ring. Were the teachers wrong? Had everything been held in an acorn in some distant age? The teacher's story sounded false. The question of where everything came from pestered her like a broken tooth. Why would a question earn you the cane? The windmill had changed, and seeing change might help her strip away the teacher's stories, see what lurked underneath. She kept walking towards the windmill, glancing around. She saw a distinctive branch, a long sinew of brighter blue, arching over her head from one tree to another a few yards away, an almost perfect curve. You could stand between the trees and pretend you were in the middle of a tiny slice of the world, a model, one tree to her north, the other to her south. The trees were like the world walls. They bowed out slightly. The curving branch above could stand in for the sun's arch. She used to play here. The shapes were similar, and the branch seemed the same width as the sun's arch, even though the sun's arch was huge and far away and it brought you daytime. The sun's arch moved, sliding down the world like a bracelet over an arm. It had set below the evening horizon, gone to light up other parts of the world, a band of light riding over the world's vault and walls. Strange how everyone called it the sun's arch. Had anyone ever been called Sun? Was it named after them? Questions for later. Night would linger for a few hours, running away as the sun's arch rose to dawnward. Tomorrow's arch always looked the same as today's, but Foss wasn't sure if it was the same one. She traced things out in the dirt behind her parents' house once. Walking the ring's length took more than a year. So surely if there was only one sun's arch, there would be too much distance to travel. It couldn't get back in time for dawn. Were there several copies of the sun's arch, all looking the same, chasing each other, lighting up their own section of the ring, the spaces between them creating the nights? She tried talking to school friends, trying to get them to think, but the question scared them. Foss looked back. She'd still be visible from the road. She drifted deeper into the wood, moving between the trees, ducking between the dangling branches. The trees would peter out before she reached a windmill, and she'd need to take care. Foss dawdled, giving herself time to think about what might have turned the ancient windmill into that wonderful figure of light, the dancer in the evening sky. Okay, thank you. Cheers. Where's my flipping tea? I think that's the teapot.
Yeah, so we have the list. It was up on the screen all the way through your reading, Kev. So you can see kevinelliott.space is there, and
right.
you'll be able to find Kev's blog,
Basic blog.
which is hilarious. Actually, there were several moments that I went through and kind of laughed out loud. Yeah, absolutely. So okay, that's 3 down. We have 1 to go, and may I introduce the lovely Kate Russell, if you'd like to come and join us at the front. So I think our joyous delight this evening is a particularly notorious scene from chapter 11 of Mostly Harmless, chapter 10 of Mostly Harmless. Goodness, I can't count. Now, after this, we'll be moving into Dockers, so there will be a little bit of a turnover. But if you're lucky, we'll see how much time we have left. I might have one more story for you after this. We'll see what happens. But yeah, absolutely. Kate, over to you.
Cool.
It's not turned you on.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Internet. I'll move my beer out of the way. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at this stage of the evening. I'm now going to horrify you. So this is the bit in my book, Elite Mostly Harmless, that most people who've watched me on television since the mid-90s, at the point in chapter 10 where they go, what the hell is going on? This person is more twisted than I could ever realize. So basically, Angel Rose has been blown up. She's been picked up by a pirate, Catherine, and yeah, this is where it all goes a little bit awry. Sorry, Mum, ahead of time. Please don't watch. Riley, it's me, Angel Rose. This vessel came to my aid when my own ship was ambushed and destroyed. She swallowed hard. Cram's ship was also destroyed. I'm afraid he didn't make it. Pirate, you have 20 seconds to stand down your weapons and deactivate your shields before I deactivate them for you. And Commander Rose, there was a meaningful pause. You can deactivate your flapping lips and start thinking about how you can put them to good use, making up for the lack of gold in your possession. Angel was shocked. Captain Riley was a sleazeball, but he'd never been outright rude to her. Captain, in case you hadn't noticed, I no longer have a ship. We were ambushed by pirates. If you recall, I didn't want to run this trade mission in the first place, for this very reason. 10 seconds. Catherine slammed her palm on the comms panel to mute it and spun the command chair round to face Angel. Screw this. Who is this asshole? Come along now, girls. Play nicely, and I might let you have a go on my joystick later. The voice over the comms link goaded. He's an asshole that ultimately has to answer to my father. You might as well do as he says, and we can sort this out once he's boarded. 5 seconds, ladies. Don't make me get out my big cannon and fire it at you. Catherine growled, and then swung back around and thumbed the channel open. Okay, dickwipe, enough of the smart comments. You're so obsessed with the size of yourself that it makes me wonder if you're compensating for something. Keep your weapons grid online and you'll find out. A spray of tracer fire suddenly erupted from a gun mounted underneath the Corvette's nose, peppering the Asp's left wing before raking across the windscreen. Okay, put your pods back in your pants. I know when I'm outgunned. Catherine slammed a hand on the weapons control panel. There was an electronic sigh as the circuits powering her missiles and autocannon wound down. Shields 2, and no funny business, the captain said, voice loaded with contempt. I'm coupling up and coming aboard. Well, Captain Riley was hanging off the drag frame that cut through the center of the Asp's cockpit, admiring his handiwork. 2 little birds trussed up and ready for roasting. I have to say, I've rather outdone myself. Angel twisted against the zip-lock band, securing her hands behind her. She was still hooked up like a side of meat on the life support tank rack. It was possibly the least dignified position she'd ever been in. Look, Riley, I don't know what you think you're playing at. You might have my mother in your pocket, but you can't just tie us up like this without any charge. I know my rights. Riley let go of the drag frame, leaving Catherine secured to the command chair, and pushed himself towards Angel. When he arrived, he gripped the front of her flight suit with both hands, pulling her face to her in his smug leer until they were nose to nose. You relinquished any flimsy rights you might have once you put your thumb on that contract, little bird. Angel cringed back as far as her bondage would allow, feeling molested by his hot breath as it puffed against her lips with every word. Besides, I've spent years dreaming about having you tied up and ready for roasting. You're not going to snatch that little pleasure away from me so soon, are you? Doris beeped, startling them both. There is nothing in my client's contract which gives the Navy additional jurisdiction over property or personnel. Commander Rose is correct. She is within her rights to know the charges being brought against her, or you must release the bonds. Ah, yes, Doris, the little homing pigeon flying with the birds. You've served your purpose, and for that I am grateful. But the gold is gone. I'd say it's time to terminate your program. He reached inside his breast pocket and pulled out the control pad he'd used to activate the bot and the bangle. He punched in a code, and a pattern of orange then red LEDs flashed across the biscuit tin-sized machine's chest panel. There, now you can go back to being a calculator or toast muffins or something. Program terminated. Your mission was a failure. He returned his attention to Angel, sliding one hand around the back of her neck and pulling her face more forcibly to his. Now, where were we? Oh, yes, you tied up, and me imagining all the terrible ways I'm going to pleasure myself now that I finally have your attention. He squeezed just below the base of her skull and pressed his body against hers. Your mother is right. You are definitely going to have to grow your hair back. I need something to hold on to. Angel shuddered, turning her face away and swallowing hard. Her mind raced in useless circles around the situation, looking for an escape plan. It didn't find one. On the contrary, Doris whirred and moved in closer to the captain. We were ambushed and the gold was taken. True, but my programming requires that I protect my client's assets. The gold may be gone, but until such time as she has replenished its value, Commander Rose is the only asset at my disposal. Riley's eyes roamed down Angel's throat and came to rest on her breasts. Despite the fact that they were covered in several layers of flame-retardant cloth and webbed straps, his gaze made her feel naked as usual. I think you'll find the commander's assets are at my disposal right now. He used the hand that wasn't clasping the back of her neck to pinch the fleshy lumps of her breasts, grinning at the way it made her squirm. Get off me, you goy-loving shit-kicker, she hissed through gritted teeth. Well, that kind of language will have to stop. From now on, you will be ladylike and compliant, like a good little woman ought to be, seen and not heard. Don't worry, I have the perfect supply of narcs to make that happen, just as soon as I get you back on my ship. Definitely compensating. Catherine's heckle made Riley stop, clawing at Angel's body, and turn slowly. He glared. Any man who needs to tie up a woman and drug her in order to get his pods off may as well wear a sign saying, "I have a tiny dick and have done with it." Oh, yes, I'd almost forgotten about you, pirate. He turned and gave Angel's left boob one last grabby squeeze. You are a long-term project, my dear, and we'll have to wait, I'm afraid. Sorry to disappoint, just when we were finally getting somewhere. Letting go of Angel, he kicked off the tank rack, pitching himself towards where Catherine was secured to the back of the command chair. Reaching at her at some speed in zero gravity, he grabbed a fistful of dreadlocks to anchor himself. She gasped as her head was snatched backwards to cease his momentum, exposing a soft, vulnerable throat. You, on the other hand, he slammed his hips up against hers, pressing his lips to her ear as he yanked her head painfully to the side by her dreads. You are disposable, like garbage. He licked her cheek suddenly, tasting her with animal intent. Catherine squirmed as a slick of his spittle dribbled down the side of her exposed neck. Like I said, so long as you have to keep me tied up like this, I have to assume you're compensating for having a tiny dick. You were probably bullied about it at school. I know how you boys get in the washroom, obsessed with each other's cocks and all that. If you really want to play like a man, why don't you release me? Let me lick you back. I bet you'd pre-jack before you could even get your pods out of your pants. The air was driven violently out of her lungs as Riley's fist connected with her belly, hard and without warning. She bent as double as her bindings would allow, a moan escaping her lips. He let her groan for a moment and then raked her head back again, dreads still balled in his fist. Sensitive topic, huh? Catherine said, voice strained as she fought to suck some air inside her lungs and overcome the wrenching pain in her gut. You probably struggle to get it up at all, even in zero gravity. Never mind unloading in your pants, right? Can you only do it if a little boy is sucking it for you? Is that your problem, sugar? This time he struck her across the face with his balled fist. It connected like an asteroid wrecker at full pelt, splitting the skin across her cheekbone and making her teeth rattle. His face was a beetroot picture of rage as he reached between her legs, forcing his thick fingers into the Kevlar-covered warmth there. His lips pulled back in a vicious sneer as he tweaked savagely at her crotch. He couldn't feel her through the rough webbing of her flight suit, but it was cleared by the way she wriggled that she could feel him. Oh, I can get it up all right, you dirty little whore. And it's plenty big enough to get your attention. Don't you be wondering about that for long, I can assure you. Catherine pushed her hips forwards against his hand, causing his rough exploration to falter. That's more like it, soldier, she crooned, pressing against his grabbing hand. He pulled back a little and to look into her face, trying to judge whether she was leading him on or not. She watched him with hooded eyes, a trickle of blood tracing down the contour of her face from the fresh split he'd made below her left eye. He pressed his hand more deeply into the warmth between her legs and gave a savage squeeze. Her hips arched to meet him, and she moaned, this time in pleasure. Now you're acting like a real man. Show me what you've got then, soldier. Let's see if your cock lives up to your cocksure. Captain Riley looked at her carefully. He was used to taking what he wanted, but never having it offered willingly. He was still unsure whether she was for real, but he wasn't going to untie her, so what did it matter? Let her play her games. It was turning him on, something wicked. His eyes wandered the length of her body. Her clothes and jewelry looked heavy and aggressive, but without them, she would just be another woman, fleshy body, warm and yielding. He was getting hard at the prospect and stepped in close, placing one leg either side of hers. He kept her head pulled back with a fistful of hair and gave her left breast a squeeze with the other hand. "Oh, my cock lives all right," he said, as he ground his pelvis into her hip so she could feel the growing presence of his arousal. "I guess there must be something useful between your legs after all, but do you know what to do with it?" Across the cabin, Angel's cheeks flushed, and she looked away embarrassed. From the little she knew of Catherine so far, she was fairly sure this porn movie scene was some kind of ruse to facilitate an escape. But right now, pretty much nothing would surprise her, and watching it play out was excruciatingly awkward. Catherine leant back against the command chair, lifting one leg and curling it about Riley's hips, then repeating the exercise with the other, so that she was hooked around him, around his groin, pressing herself against his growing bulge. "Bite me, Captain. Can you do that?" She bit her own lip to demonstrate what she wanted from him, leaving a pink impression as she dragged her teeth across it. Breathing hard, Riley leant in to do as he was told. He'd never experienced a dominant woman before. He loved the feeling of power, having total control over lesser beings as they squirmed beneath his hands. It had been the same since his first bootleg consignment of slaves shortly after graduating from officer training school. Not exactly Navy-approved cargo or behavior, but hard to resist when they screamed so deliciously. It was incredible what a person could be coerced to do when they were terrified enough for their life. But this, his senses buzzed with the sensuality of such a strong woman bending to his will. This experience was going to be hard to beat. She squeezed her legs around his buttocks, tugging him in towards her, holding him tight. With one hand still twisted into the dreads at the nape of her neck, the other bracing his body against the back of the command chair, he pressed his face into the side of her neck, breathing her in, tasting her with his lips. She moaned again, and his pants got tighter, threatening to burst entirely. He was going to have to rein it in, or her prediction about him pre-jacking would come true. He leant forward and bit down hard on her neck, teeth crunching against cartilage in a very unsensual way. Catherine grunted as his teeth sunk deeper. Her legs tightened instinctively around him, and he bit down, enjoying the thought of how much pain he was going to cause her over the next few hours. How many hours really depended on her? How long she remained conscious? Catherine arched her back so that he had to lean in further to keep up the pressure on her neck. It was his turn to moan with barely contained ecstasy. Suddenly, Catherine jerked, arching her back in a spasm. From across the room, Angel heard a cold, metallic clack. The captain stopped biting and straightened up, cocking his head to the side momentarily, as if he'd heard something interesting. Then his whole body went rigid with shock as he convulsed against something ripping at his belly. He tried to pull back, away from the inexplicable hurt, but Catherine's legs squeezed tighter as the agony tore through him, pulling him towards her and deeper, deeper into the pain. He pushed his upper body away from the pirate, bracing arms against the back of the chair as he stared in disbelief into her viciously smiling eyes. "What's wrong, sugar? Wet your pants?" His pants did look wet, but it wasn't from his bladder. With rising panic in his eyes, it became clear he was bleeding badly. He pushed back against the chair and looked down to where he was still clutched in the circle of Catherine's legs. The tearing agony intensified, making him shriek as his stomach stretched open. He watched in horror as the yellow, fatty flesh of his sliced belly began bulging out of the slash of his suit. The emergency dermo layer was trying desperately to mesh the gash back together, but it was just too big. His insides were escaping too damn quickly. His eyes stared and his mind reeled sickeningly as he watched the gaping maw of his gut opening up. An ooze of something pinkish grey began to poke its nose out of the burgeoning slash. With absolute horror, he realized it was his intestines. He screamed and grabbed at the wound with both hands, trying to close it up. Catherine laughed and unlocked her legs, bringing her knees up tightly to her chest before pumping her feet out, connecting squarely with his chest and launching him out into the middle of the cabin. His arms wheeled about uncontrollably as he flew through the cockpit, blood and guts unraveling from his belly in zero gravity like a grotesque, slow-motion Catherine wheel made of fresh offal. The captain, still screeching, began to scrabble at his escaping innards, cradling the growing bloody string of what should definitely be on the inside of his body to his breast like a protective mother. But the more he thrashed and twisted about, the bigger the gaping hole in his stomach grew, his life force spilling out in graphic detail as his small and then large intestines spilled out too. Angel watched in horror as a tsunami of fresh blood escaped the thrashing melee, surging through the zero-G cabin towards her. She ducked to the side to avoid it, but it sloshed across her chest and cheek anyway. Flying globules of blood were everywhere now, although Captain Riley's screams were mercifully dying down to pathetic whimpers and hitching sobs. As he gradually stopped flailing about, his guts continued to unravel, twirling around him like a gruesome spirograph. Eventually, he fell still, and Angel noticed Catherine staring at the corpse with a glazed expression. Below her strangely serene face was the architect of Riley's gruesome undoing, literally. Her heavy, metallic waistband was opened up in a crescent shape of double blades, wickedly sharp and extremely bloodied. The blades would have looked pretty malignant even if Angel hadn't been gaping at them through a cockpit filled with orbiting, fleshy carnage. Feeling Angel's eyes upon her, Catherine seemed to snap back into the here and now, cheeks reddening as she looked down at her belt. "Insurance," she shrugged, seeming to feel as if an explanation were needed. Her shoulders dropped, and then she appeared to be reaching for something behind her back. Then there was another metallic slicing sound, this one short and sharp, and her hands fell free. She brought them around to the front of her body, and Angel noticed similar razor-like blades extending from her inner wrists. Razor-sharp scalpels had ejected from her metal bracelets, cutting cleanly through the graphite wristbands that had held her bonded to the chair. She carefully snapped the blades back into place, sliding her thumb across the invisible primer button so that the gunmetal bands looked just like statement jewelry again. "Custom made." Angel was still gawping like a fish out of water as Catherine reset the blades of her girdle before pushing off the command chair and coasting through what was once Captain Riley's vital organs towards her. She seemed to hardly notice the mess as darkening droplets of human matter splattered across her chest and face. She arrived at the tank rack, placing one hand either side of Angel's shoulders. The pose was ominously familiar. Catherine looked for a moment into Angel's eyes, a deep, penetrating gaze, and Angel felt her own innards tighten as the pirate reached out and unclipped a set of pliers from the maintenance shuck by the exit hatch. She leaned in close to Angel, stretching behind her with the pliers. It was a surreal experience, sensing the hot, sweet breath of the woman on her face as she felt around behind her for the zip-lock restraints. The macabre scene of Captain Riley's bloody demise revolving through the cockpit in the background. His deconstructed intestines formed a whimsical double helix in the middle of the cabin. Angel's wrist ties tightened, and then there was a click, and her hands came free. Catherine breathed deeply but didn't move away. She glared into Angel's eyes for a moment. "Get the corpse into a fertilizer can. You can find one in the cargo bay. I'm going to clean this mess up." With that, the pirate kicked herself off the tank rack. unclipping a vacuum hose from the maintenance shuck and turning it on. Then she began sucking stringy plumes of human entrails into the funnel as casually as if she were spring cleaning the cockpit of cobwebs. Thank you. Really huge thanks to Angel Vids, who provided the music for this. And if you're not already following her, then you should do. You Angel Vids on Twitter, right? Yeah, follow Angel Vids. That's her music. So thank you very much, Angel. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I think we've got about 25 minutes left before Dockers. So just so that we don't kind of end on a totally, utterly gruesome note, I'm gonna read a short here that that perhaps is a little bit more of a. It's got a little bit of hope to it, to be honest. All right, so we've all been very dark, and it is still horror, but it's got a bit of hope to it, a little bit of hope. Okay, so this is from Phoenix Point. This is one of the released short stories from Phoenix Point that we've been doing with the crowdfunding with for the last month. And it's a particular sort of dystopian science fiction horror in the future with aliens trying to kill everybody. And anyway, this is a story called Harbinger. I'm sitting in a dark canvas tent by the door listening to the rain. It's absolutely hammering down, but I'm still considering waiting out in the street. That way I could avoid the resentful looks and whispers. She shouldn't be here, they say. Maybe they're right. There's a soldier standing just outside the door. He's wearing a waterproof and holding a rifle while he stares out into the street. If I wasn't dressed in a t-shirt and jeans, I'd join him. The sullen faces around me are thin and pale. I can see signs of the virus here and there. Others are struggling with life-ending conditions. Most people wouldn't be visiting the emergency health center on a day like this if they had a choice. I look away and stare into the world we're sheltering from. Black clouds piss on the smouldering remains of the old doctor's surgery across the road. Rioters torched it a week ago. That was when they'd had to call in the National Guard. How much difference 300 teenagers and 20-somethings and army fatigues will make is anyone's guess. But for now, Greenville isn't tearing itself apart. Miss Owen, the doctor will see you now. I get up and walk into the depths of the tent, feeling those angry eyes judging me with every move I make. I know what they're thinking. She's not ill, and they're right. I'm not. Not anymore. This way, Miss Owen. The girl escorting me is in beige army camo. She can't be more than 19. She's wearing an ID badge that says Miller. That could be her name, or just the name on the jacket she put on this morning. I'm taken through a flap of canvas into the empty space and through there into the temporary office. There's a man sat behind a desk. He's also dressed in army gear with a hazmat suit over the top. His hood is pulled back to reveal his balding, sweaty face and head. The breathing mask is on the table. The man looks up at me and smiles as I enter. Hello, Miss Owen. I'm Doctor. I hold up my hand, cutting him off. I don't care. Where's Dr. Grant? We've taken him out of town. The situation here is a little too demanding for a civilian general practitioner. Okay. The doctor picks up an envelope from the table. I have your final blood test results for you. He holds it out. I take it and tear it open. The letter inside is short and sweet, with numbers, percentages, and technical details. Dr. Grant would have sat me down and gone through this, but I doubt I'll get the same treatment from the military. The words remission and all clear should make me feel happy, but instead I'm numb. I know what this cure cost. Congratulations, Miss Owen, the doctor says. His eyes flick to the entrance. It's nice to be able to give someone good news these days. I don't reply. He bites his lip as if he wants to say something else, but reconsiders and waves me out. I leave as swiftly as possible, keeping my head down, and when I walk back through the tent, as I walk back through the tent. It's mid-afternoon. The rain has eased off, but the clouds remain dark and angry. It's foggy on the street. It's always foggy these days, and there's a stale smell to everything. The authorities say we shouldn't panic. The media points to falling temperature averages, and every channel takes turns to slag off climate change scientists who preach Armageddon from the sea. Whatever, man. Deal with your world. I've got my own issues. My house is 3 blocks from the National Guard encampment. The windows are boarded up, but we got off lightly. My parents left 3 weeks ago, and I decided to stay. I'm 33 years old, and 4 months ago I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, so they couldn't really argue about how I wanted to spend my last days. I shouldn't be alive, and in a way, I'm not. The old sofa is where I always sat to watch television. Dad used to kick the arm when he thought I was being lazy or he wanted something. After they found the tumour, he let me be. We had an argument about it when I told him I didn't want his pity. He cried. I've never seen him cry before. I'm sat in the chair again now, staring at the blank screen. There's no point in turning it on. The stories will all be the same, variations on this is the end of times. It's funny how people get religious when they contemplate death. There's a knock at my door. I sigh and get up to answer it. A man is standing outside. I recognize him from the medical tent, one of the sullen faces. He's carrying his son in his arms. The boy looks thin and weak. There are lesions on his face. I know the signs. Are you Lisa Owen? The man says. I stare at him. Please go away. The man shakes his head. I can't. My son needs you. You don't know what you're asking, I say. I need you to heal my boy. What I do for him won't heal him. It will. I have faith. I've seen it. You've seen what you wanted to see. Please don't ask me to do this. What other choice have I have? I stare at the man, but his desperate question can't be denied. I open the door and step inside. I open the door and he steps inside. He enters the house and carries his dying child into the living room, laying him down on the couch. I retake my seat. I can hear the boy's rattling breath. It's 6:30 in the afternoon. He'll die before morning unless someone intervenes. What's your name? I ask the father. Roger, he replies. Well, Roger, there's beer in the fridge. Best you bring 2 for you and 2 for me. We'll be needing them. When you have cancer, they suggest all sorts of expensive therapy. The whole healthcare system in this country is shot to shit. And when it comes to incurable diseases, that buy now, pay later philosophy you see in the car showrooms is basically how it works these days. Only difference is you've only got one body, so you can't shop around. Medical insurance isn't worth crap unless you've been identified as a priority citizen of the new American Republic. They say things are better over the border in independent California, but I doubt it. We still get their news channels and nothing looks better. In fact, it all looks worse, closer to the sea. I got diagnosed 4 months ago. Like most people who get cancer, I went on chemo. I started losing my hair after 2 weeks. For most people, it grows black when the body adjusts or afterwards. For me, I know it's never coming back. All part of the cure. Roger comes back with a beer. As he cracks one open, offers it to me. I take a swig and he's back in my chair. Roger sits at the end of the couch, stroking his son's hair. What's his name, I ask. Matthew. How long since he got infected? A few days, I guess, Roger says. He's blinking hard, trying to keep back the tears. I guess it's taken a lot from him to come here and beg me for help. We probably tried to deny what it was. I nod to him and we sit in silence for a while, sipping from the bottle. I need to give him the speech. I'm working up to it. The alcohol should help, but it doesn't. I just feel even more dislocated from who I was. You need to understand what you're asking before I'll agree to do anything, I say at last. You have to let me explain what I know and accept that what I'll do to Matthew. Okay, Roger says. Anything you want. I sigh. They're always like this. Fixated about what's in front of them rather than what'll happen after that, but I have to try. A month ago, I was terminally ill with cancer. I contracted the Pandora virus, collapsed, and was taken to intensive care. My body's immune system was shot to shit. So the medical diagnosis was that I'd last about 48 hours. No one expected me to get better. I take another swig of beer and lean forward in my seat. They flew in some of the top doctors in the country to my bedside and took every sample they could from me, even bone marrow, which, trust me, is not something you ever want people doing. I was CAT scanned, X-rayed, the works. Once they had every piece of data they could get, they discharged me and sent me home. I've had regular blood tests ever since, and the tumour in my gut literally got eaten by the new bacteria. After that was done, it didn't stop. I pointed at Matthew. Only difference being between me and him right now is that for some reason my body accepted the changes and let it happen. Roger is looking at me and nodding, but I can see all this is washing right past him. He can't think further than his son right now, but I still need to tell him, otherwise it'll come back to haunt me later. I heard you healed a little girl called Rebecca, he said. I shake my head. That's what I'm trying to explain. She isn't better. I spoke to her mother. She says she is. What's walking around now isn't Rebecca. It's something else in her skin. Roger doesn't reply to that. Instead, he flinches away from my stare, swallows, and looks at his son. Maybe I've got through to him. I continue my story to fill in the silence. They found a new strain of the virus in my body. According to the scientists, it's like the stuff Jenner found when he was looking for smallpox vaccines. The only difference is they don't know what it does. They tried injecting samples of my blood and bone marrow into other patients with the virus and other patients with terminal diseases, and none of it worked. People were dying overnight. After that, they discharged me. A day later, people like you started showing up. Seems somebody in the CDC decided to blab about me and what happened. I'm a freak, nothing more. I can hear Roger quietly weeping. His tears run down his face and onto his son's. I have to believe you can help us, he says, in between shuddering sobs. I've got nothing else to try. I sigh. You have to understand what you're asking. Rebecca's mother, Jacqueline, came here with her son, with her daughter 3 days ago. She put her on that couch, just like the same as Matthew. I went to the kitchen, got a syringe, and took a sample of my blood. We injected it into Rebecca. In less than an hour, she was awake and could sit up and talk to us. After 3 hours, the lesions had begun to fade. Jacqueline and Rebecca left soon after. I don't know why she survived, but she did. And I've seen them since, and I've looked into her eyes. You might think she's recovered, but she hasn't. She's changing, just like I am. She's not Rebecca anymore. Roger raises his head. You healed her. You can heal Matthew. I shake my head. No, you're not listening. I didn't heal Rebecca. Roger stands up, looming over me. I heard every word you said. I just don't draw the same conclusion as you. My son meant everything to me. I want him to live. Are you going to help us or... He leaves the sentence hanging between us. I look at his hands. They're clenched into fists. Damn. The syringe is in the kitchen, I say. There's needles in a sealed packet in the fridge. You need to put the kettle on and properly sterilize both, then bring them in here with some tissues. You do it, Roger says. I'll watch you. For a moment, I consider resisting. I've half an empty beer bottle in my hand. I could finish it, get up and use it as a weapon, knock him out and get away. Where would I go? How could I do that to a man who's just about to lose his son? Right now, he has hope. Maybe I'm being a coward by fanning the flames in his heart, but I've tried to explain. I'm in the kitchen, the kettle is boiled, and I'm washing what we need. He's right behind me, the sobbing has stopped. He's committed to whatever's necessary. I've seen that look in the moment when it's the moment where civilization ends. There's a box of tissues on the top of the fridge, I say. I turn around and silently he hands them to me. Thank you, he says. I take one from the top and jab the clean needle into the crook of my arm. The pain is familiar. I pump my fist and the vein quickly yields a syringe full of blood. I wipe the wound with tissue and hand him what he wants. Thank you, he says. His expression crumbles. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Yes, you did, I say. What's done is done. Just remember, if he survives and you tell anyone, the army will take Matthew away from you. Okay. He leaves the kitchen going back to his son. I'm feeling lightheaded, but I can't stay here. First Rebecca and then Matthew. I've been lucky and it's only been 2 of them. But that won't last. Roger will talk, Jacqueline will talk. They'll all come now and I'll end up dead. I need to leave. Roger doesn't hear me slip out the kitchen door and walk away down the drive. 20 minutes later and it's getting dark and I'm on a highway just out of town walking south. I haven't prepared for this, but in that moment when I handed Roger the syringe, I knew what would happen if I stayed. I remember those looks in the tent. Once it gets out, no matter what I tell them, they'll come for me. I'll be bled dry as a martyr to false hope, creating new horrors out of the diseased, decaying flesh of those who should be left to die. This world is going to hell. The only option we have is choosing how we meet our end. The road is quiet. It used to be busy, but no one's moving around anymore. The mercantile wheels of society are grinding to a halt. The panicky exodus further inland happened weeks ago. All that's left are the army and the people who haven't given up and accepted their fate. Is that me? Am I still fighting to survive? No. I just don't want to accept what's been planned. There'll be a checkpoint up ahead. They've been trying to establish a quarantine zone around the town. Helicopters go up every day shooting animals in the woods while barbed wire fences go up either side of the roads. If I want to get through, I'll have to get off the road and think of some way to avoid all the security. I think back over what happened. I haven't really recovered. I don't feel the same as I did before the cancer. Something changed after I got the virus. There's something cold about how I see the world now. I'm disconnected, not me. I know what I should care about, the miracle I should be grateful for, but instead... I just feel empty and hollow. I know I've passed this curse on to those children. If Matthew survives, he won't be the same. Rebecca's already gone. All three of us are changing into something that whatever comes next, nature has to evolve to survive. Perhaps we're what's to come. I hear an explosion in the distance and turn round. It came from back down the road near Greenville. Another explosion, then another. There's an orange glow in the horizon. I don't know what that means. The rain starts again, soaking through my t-shirt, but I'm not cold anymore. The water feels like silk against my skin. The despair and exhaustion washes away. I remember being a child, splashing through puddles, swimming in the sea, holding my breath and diving down into the murky black. I loved all that. How could I forget? How could I... Headlights cut through the evening mist. I hear the throaty growl of a large engine truck or SUV, I guess, or maybe an army APC, doesn't matter. I stick out a thumb. There's a change in the engine tone as the driver passes me, and brake lights confirm that whoever it is has decided to stop. It's a big 18-wheeler with a canvas-covered trailer. As I get close, the back opens up and 3 people jump out. They're wearing long coats that reach down to their ankles. Light from inside the back makes them dark shadows in the fading sun. They're walking towards me. I stop and hold up my hands. Hey, I call out. I just want to lift through the checkpoint. You can drop me off at the next gas station. You mind your business and I'll mind mine. That okay? Are you Lisa Owen? A woman's voice. One of the 3. She knows my name. Not a good sign. I take a step back, trying to keep some distance between us. Look, forget it. I'll walk or I'll wait for the next car. Sorry to have bothered you. We cannot leave you, the woman says. She stops about a yard away. She's wearing gloves and a hooded cloak, almost like a robe. She carries some kind of long walking stick, and her face is covered with a decorated steel mask. Her companions are similarly dressed and waiting behind her. Sure, you can leave me, I say. You just get back in your truck and carry on driving. You must come with us. I take another step back. Please, just let me go. Miss Owen, the woman says, our people have been searching the country for you. There were 2 cars on the road following you. We've dealt with them, but more will come. The checkpoint ahead will not let you pass. The only way you will escape is if you accept our help. She kneels in front of me. Her companions do the same. There's a flash of lightning, and a moment later, thunder booms from above. I'm tempted to run while they're kneeling in the wet tarmac, but where would I go? How would I live? Where do you want to take me, I ask. The woman looks up and gazes into my eyes, reaches a hand to her chin, and removes the mask. Now I can see her face. Her skin is wet and shining, and she's breathing hard. There are marks on her, a strange whirl of tattoos and fresh scarring. I recognize the signs. She's been infected. The robe she wears is bloodstained and torn. There's an open wound along her right shoulder and down her arm. We will deliver you to a sacred place, she says in answer to my question. You will find nowhere safer in this world. What's the catch? You want me to cure you? No, I need no cure. The worthy survive the blessing of Anu. I swallow past the lump in my throat. I don't know what that means, I say. The woman stands up and reaches out her hand. You must learn to accept what you have become, she says. You can guide us all to salvation. You're insane. What is insanity? Is it insane to cling to a decaying world without hope? Humanity has put its faith in all sorts of answers to our doom. We offer you a haven from all that you fear. All that we ask is that you join us and learn to belong. Thunder rumbles again. The rain is glorious, but I can't stay out here alone without food or shelter. Take me as far as the gas station, like I asked, I say. I promise I'll listen to whatever you're selling, but I want out whenever we get there. You have to let me go. In response, the 2 figures stand up and join the woman. They are men, similarly clothed and masked. We agree to your terms, the woman says. All 3 of them held their hands out to me. Now will you come with us? I will, I reply. Before they can react, I march straight past them, ignoring their strange welcome, and make for the cab of the truck. I yank the passenger door handle up. The bearded driver looks at me in surprise. You're not supposed to... No one said I had to ride in the back, I say, waving my hand dismissively. You people want to recruit me? Fine. Do it here. Be honest about what you want. The driver shrugs and laughs. Sure, okay, he says. He has the same whirl tattoo on his neck as the woman, but he's dressed like me. His white shirt is also stained with blood. I ain't a pretty talker anyway. I just do what I'm told. Suits me, I reply. I glance around the cab. The windscreen is cracked, and there's broken glass everywhere. I brush some away and sit down. Let's start at the beginning. My name is Lisa Owen. I'm Jed Gaines. Good to meet you, Jed. Likewise. It's a tiny bit of hope. Tiny bit of hope in there. Okay, thank you very much. I think next we will be setting up for Dockers. Great.